you guys are really excited. I hope a lot of you guys got your books, you got them signed. Yeah, so I hope that was great. Welcome to the Aero Theater. I'm Afra. I'm a programming assistant with the American Cinematheque. Thank you guys for being here tonight. It's a really special night. I also, before we get started, I want to thank all of our staff, our volunteers, our members, and our projections. Sherilyn up in the booth. Please give it up for her. Thank you. As I'm sure you guys all know, we're here for American Graffiti. There's going to be a Q&A with Candy Clark after the film. It's going to be a wonderful conversation. Yeah, give it up. Along with his writing partner Scott Alexander has written such films as Ed Wood, Man on the Moon, Dolomite Is My Name, and so much more. He is the Emmy and Golden Globe Award winning Larry Karaszewski.
Yeah.
Hello, how are you guys doing?
Woo!
I'm just curious when I do these things. Who here has never seen American Graffiti before? Wow, I actually was not expecting that. That's fine. George Lucas would have got you guys to see.
Can you ask the following question? Who has
Yes.
seen the sequel to American Graffiti?
More American Graffiti. I spent a lot of time on that title. More American Graffiti. I saw the movie many, many times as a kid. It's hard to overstate what a phenomenon this movie was when it came out in 1973. I mean, it was a surprise box office sensation. The album was like the #1 album of the year. Basically there was a director named George Lucas who got his start there. It also launched what was called the nostalgia craze in the 1970s. It was this weird thing where, like, for some reason they kept on looking backwards. But the ad line was something like, "Where were you in '62?" And what's amazing is the movie was made in 1973, so they really were only looking 11 years back. But it felt like it was a completely another universe. I mean, it was before the beaches, it was before Vietnam, it was before the assassinations, it was before Nixon and Watergate, and it just felt like another world. It's funny, I was thinking about it today, like if someone wanted to get a movie about 11 years ago now, and so I looked up, like, what was big in 2014, and Taylor Swift had the #1 album. The #1 movie was a Marvel movie. The Kardashians were on TV. It's like nothing has changed. Something has changed. It was also incredibly critically acclaimed. It was nominated for a bunch of Oscars. It was nominated for Best Picture. It was nominated for Best Director. It was nominated for Best Screenplay, Best Editing, and of course, it was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, Candy Clark. She came out of nowhere and just sort of like charmed the world, and it launched her career. She went on to do movies that I just worship, like The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie and Nick Rogue. She all the way to the Twin Peaks Return with David Lynch. She's here tonight promoting this book. You might have saw her up here signing it. The book is super cool. It's called Tightheads, and it's a collection of photographs she took during the whole New Hollywood era. And what's cool about it, they're Polaroids. And everybody in there just feels so relaxed. It feels so intimate. A lot of times you get a book done by a movie star, it's all stars. And there are stars in there, but what's kind of cool about it, most of them are just like fascinating, interesting people, writers, artists. I mean, it's people like Terry Southern and Ed Ruscha and Swifty Lazar and Buck Henry. And so it's just it's basically you flip these pages and you feel like you're eavesdropping at kind of the coolest party that ever existed. She's got a huge write-up, I think, today in the New York Times, and this week in the New Yorker. So this book is kind of taking off, and we're really excited for it. She's going to do Q&A with us right after the movie. So think of great questions and enjoy from 1973, American Graffiti.
It holds up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
How did you get involved in this? Train groups and how did you end up?
Well, I tried out and I got a little screen test with Charles Martin Smith, and then unbelievable to me, I got the part.
Did you come in, you had to audition twice though, correct?
No, the first time I met with George Lucas, it was just a meeting. It wasn't an audition. The only audition I had was trying out for the part, and it was over at Dove Films, which is Haskell Wexler's commercial shooting house. And had to be about 200 people trying out for different parts, so it was very nerve-wracking. And I had my little scene memorized where Toad picks me up, and my name is finally called. And I remember Judy Strangis was there, and she had a part on Room 222, which is a big hit TV show about teenagers in high school. Anyway, so my name is finally called. I go back into this little alcove, and there's George Lucas, Fred Roos, and Charles Martin Smith, who was a lot shorter than I am. And I thought, I'm not going to get this part, because they always like the romantic, the man to be taller than the lady. And so I just kind of did my dialogue and wasn't hopeful at all, and left. And the next thing I know, I got the part. I don't know why, but I did. And I'm so happy I did, because it's a classic film. It's like being in The Wizard of Oz. It goes down in history.
What was it like shooting the movie? I can't imagine all those people all in one location. Was there a bit of a party going on? Were people hanging out all the time?
No, if you didn't have to work, you stayed in your room and rested. But if you had to work, they would pick you up about 4:30 in the afternoon, and they would take you to the location. We were based in San Rafael, California. Most of the scenes were shot in Petaluma, California. There was that one race scene on Paradise Road, which is really Freighties Road outside of Petaluma. And if you didn't have to work, you just took it easy, because the hours were long. You'd get picked up at 4:30. You'd be back at your hotel around 6:30 in the morning. And really difficult to get any rest, because you're at the Holiday Inn and other people staying there, and they don't realize there's actors that have been up all night, so they're slamming their doors, and housekeeping is knocking on the door every 5 minutes. And always the hot water was something with their hot water tank was always, cold water. And so, we weren't partying or, doing anything like that on our days off, just basically taking it easy.
Did you want to be an actress when you were growing up? Was this something you dreamed of?
No, never. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. We didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. And my highest aspiration was to be a secretary receptionist. And that's basically, what women were offered back then in the 60s and the 50s. Either get married, have a bunch of kids, or be a secretary receptionist. I went to a high school that had, it was called Technical High School, and I took typing and, cooking class, and they offered, beauty shop, how to, cosmetology. I was named Miss Plumbing. One year I had a banner that said Miss Plumbing. And our school had basically the first computers I ever saw, and they were as big as a Volkswagen, and they were always breaking down. But we had auto body and all kinds of great things to learn at a technical school. Should be at least offered in every city, so you learn a skill instead of thinking about going to college.
But what made you get into performing? What was it?
Nothing made me get into performing.
It happened.
It happened only because other people wanted me to do it, but it was not something that I was aspiring to or going after. Only after the fact. And Fred Roos was a big part of that. I wanted to be an extra. I was a model in New York City, And I had devoted 4 years to that, and I wasn't really willing to change careers in midstream until I got a little taste of acting, and then I just dumped modeling and went on to, trying out for parts and stuff.
Your first movie was with John Huston, correct? Is that Patsy?
My first movie was with John Huston, Stacy Keach, Susan Terrell, and Jeff Bridges.
Wow.
What was John Huston like?
He was very tall and thin. He smoked cigars and actually inhaled them. Dunhills. Yeah, and that eventually is what got him, was the emphysema. But he had a very booming voice, and he would just say to me, "Let's just try it again, okay?" And that was basically his direction. I had no idea what I was doing or what acting was all about. I thought I could just basically model my way through acting. Just strike a pose and say the dialogue, and then strike another pose and say, but there's a lot more involved, I later discovered. And I did like 4 years of improvisational training and variety of different acting classes.
At what point on American Graffiti, as you just said, it's kind of like The Wizard of Oz, it's kind of it's a classic film. When you were making it, did you sense that? Or what point along the journey, because this was not, no one at Universal thought this was going to be a gigantic movie or anything, right? So at what point did you figure it out?
When I read the script, I could identify with all the characters, because that's exactly what we did in Fort Worth, Texas in the 60s. Went from one drive-in restaurant to the next, turned around, went back to the first drive-in restaurant, which was Carlson's, and then we would go to the Lone Star drive-in, turn around, cruise back, and that's how we spent the evening cruising. And these characters were so exactly what we did in Fort Worth, Texas. And it turned out that the whole U.S. was doing very much the same thing. We just didn't know it. And when I saw the movie for the first time, all cut together at the cast and crew screening, Rock Around the Clock came on, and the image of Mel's Drive-In, and the audience stood up and cheered. And I thought, got a hit.
How did it feel though? I remember I did an introduction and I talked about the phenomenon of this movie. When it opened, it played forever. It was such a gigantic hit. How did that feel? It was your second movie. This was a huge film.
Back then, if a movie was successful, the theaters would keep it for months and months and months on end. And back then, you could sit and you could rewatch the movie over and over again. Like today, the usher will come around and tell you you gotta go for the next. But back then, you could sit and watch it again and again. So a lot of people did that, and they would watch it. They go back every day for weeks. But certain theater, I've done a lot of hot rod shows and talked to people about the movie, and they said their little town kept the movie there for a year. So, it got embedded into people's psyches, and so many people identified with cruising and just those simpler times. And the music is fantastic. And it really revived the careers of those artists that had kind of gone dead in the water. We shot the film in 72, but the story was taking place in 62. It was a mere 10 years, but the music had so radically changed with the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, and all those artists were kind of dead in the water. But the music in the movie revived their careers.
Yeah.
And then soon they were playing at fairgrounds, and it just gave them a whole new lease on life. Mel's Drive-In is now a chain. There's several of them. It just helped so many people, that movie. It really did.
It's just amazing when every time someone walks on screen, and even if it's for a 2-line part, they're like, oh my God, Kathy Quinlan, or oh my God, it's like Kay Lenz, it's just like literally every single person is somebody.
like I said, there were like 200 parts, or it seemed like that, the day that I was there for my screen test. I mean, everyone was trying out for this part, and it was a scale movie. We didn't even have chairs to sit in. And we shot it up in Petaluma, which is outside of San Francisco, very foggy, very cold. We shot it in May, June. It took us 28 nights, and it was freezing. It must have been 40 degrees. In fact, in some scenes, you can see the people's breaths. Yeah, you can. If you look, you can see. But there was just, luckily, by luck, I got a sweater. But if I had just worn that spaghetti strap dress, we didn't have dressing rooms, we didn't have anything. We had one room that had a trailer that had the clothing, the makeup department. There was no place to rest. If you wanted to sit around, you had to just sit in the car. And that was it. That was the luxury. There was really no perks.
Can you talk a little bit about Lucas as a director?
George Lucas, it was a low-budget film. I think total cost with music was $850,000. It has the biggest return on the money. I think it's, at this point, made maybe close to $150 million. And if that film had not been successful, George Lucas probably wouldn't have gone on to do Star Wars. They had a very low opinion. Ned Tannen and Universal Pictures had a low opinion of the movie. They didn't get it at all. They thought it was going to be a straight to drive-in. And they changed their tune when Francis Coppola, they came to the set one day and, I remember, Francis said, they hate the title American Graffiti. They don't get it. They don't, graffiti, they don't understand it. And so Francis gave us all an assignment to come up with a new title for the movie. And Francis's choice was Rock Around the Block. I said, that stinks so bad. American Graffiti. Has such a great, ring to it. Just keep that. And so they did, thank God. Not because of me, but just because it was a great title. And, but Rock Around the Block, that sounds like straight to drive-in.
If you go on the internet, you can find the Universal memo where they have like 50 titles, like alternate titles for the same Sarah.
Yeah, for a little low-budget film, they sure put a lot of effort into it.
You are the one who actually sort of like really felt you deserved an Academy Award for this movie. You actually the Oscars were important to you.
Yeah.
Very important. At the time, Universal wasn't putting any. If you read Variety and Hollywood Reporter today around Academy Award time, it's just full of ads, expensive ads. They spend probably some of the studios probably spend millions of dollars on running a campaign. Back then, it was pretty simple. Actually, at the Academy Awards, we dressed ourselves and did our own hair and our own clothing. Today, you get dressed, somebody's doing your hair and your fingernails, but back then it was pretty modest. And what's my point? What is my point?
You decided to have a campaign.
Oh, well, I thought, what do I have to lose? It's called show business. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to run a quarter page. It cost me about $1,700. And I ran these little ads split between the Hollywood Reporter and Variety. And since then, a few actresses have copied my campaign. And it's worked for them. I thought, why not?
And it worked.
It worked.
Yeah.
And back then the competition wasn't as stiff. And I was up against Tatum O'Neal, Sylvia Sidney, there was a couple of others. Oh, Linda Blair. And we were in the best supporting. I figured maybe I'd have a chance in best supporting.
but you lost to a 10-year-old.
Well, you know, I never expected to win. Never. I thought Sylvia Sidney would win for Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams.
How did you decide what to do next after this movie?
How did I decide?
What is your next film? Is Man Who Fell to Earth your next film after this?
Yes, and some TV in between. Yeah, The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie.
Yeah.
I was never good at auditioning, so that it's not because I didn't have a lot of opportunities. It's just that I was never comfortable trying out for stuff, and that's it.
Can you talk a little bit about Nick Rogue and David Bowie and working on that movie?
Well, I thought we were talking about graffiti. What happened?
We're going to transition to your book. Oh, we may talk about your book because your book is fantastic. So how did this book come together?
Because of Sam Sweet. Yes, Sam, take a bow. Anyway, Sam was doing an article about LA in the 70s, and this friend of mine named Chloe King, he asked her for some names of people who would be willing to do an interview about Hollywood in the 70s. She put my name in the ring, and I got a call, and we did an interview, and after the interview, Sam said, "You got anything from that time?" And I said, "Yeah, I got all these Polaroids, you know, different people starting out on their career." And so I took pictures of them, forwarded it to him, and he said, "This will make a great book." And so from there, it kind of took off, and he did all the work basically. I just supplied the pictures and the commentary, but he, did the interviews with me, and he copied the pictures. And back then, I wouldn't let him leave my house with Polaroid, so I had to bring his own machine over and copy them. And because I had given a picture to this director in Germany to copy, and he left it on the bus. So I didn't trust anymore with people having my originals. But anyway, it turned out really great, and the book is basically making its debut this very month. And we had 2 great write-ups in the New York Times and the New Yorker. And now I'm here doing this, and this is all due to Sam, because he's the one that, finds these things to do.
These are all Polaroids. Can you talk about how much
These
you
are
love
Polaroids.
Why do you love Polaroids?
Well, back then, why do I love digital iPhones? Because they're instantaneous.
Yeah.
And back then, we just had actual film, which I found a little frustrating because you think you were taking all these great shots, you put them in the shop to get them processed, you get them out and they're just all horrible. You just could never get a good shot. And so with the Polaroid, it started off with the black and white Polaroid, and they would swab this vinegar smelling stuff on it, and it would develop. And the next step with Polaroid was the color, the land camera, the SX70. And that was instant pictures. That was magic. I mean, nothing had ever been like that before. And so I carried my camera around and just took pictures of friends. And we all kind of started off at the early 70s. And did I smear my lipstick?
What I loved about taking Polaroids was it was instant. It wasn't exactly instant. It took about 30 seconds or 60 seconds. So you took a picture of somebody, you take it out, and everything would kind of stop for a little while. And you just watch this thing slowly develop.
It was very much a social activity, because everyone would put their heads together, and you'd be watching this picture come up slowly, and you could tell right away if you had a good shot or a flare or a bad, someone blinked or whatever, and you just redid it. So
What I love about the book is it's not just a collection of like movie stars and things like that. You're such an eclectic group of friends. It feels like you're like at the greatest party ever. So you're like Buck Henry or Terry Southern. I mean,
It was a great party. Every weekend there'd be a choice of like 5 or 6 different parties to go to. And it would be just, you wouldn't really have to have an invitation. You'd hear about it and you would show up and you'd, be at the party, and if it was boring, you had a drink, a little hors d'oeuvre, and then you go to the next. That's the way it was back then. It was very much an open house back in the 70s. And it was a lot of dancing, a lot of, having a great time.
Anyone out here have a question? You right there.
The 58 Chevy that you got to ride around in, was it automatic or manual?
Was it 58 Chevy automatic or manual?
I think it had a gear shift. I think it did. I mean, I wasn't really paying attention to.
You right there.
Hey, thank you so much. This is about your audition process for American Graffiti. How many times did you have to audition before you were awarded this wonderful prize?
Once, and they videotaped it
How long was it before you heard that you got the part?
pretty quickly, because I think they were desperate and at the end of their rope, so they had to hire someone.
Ah.
My name is Tennessee Gardner, and I'm becoming a film archivist. And I was wondering if you could speak to the value from the perspective of being in these films to seeing it and making them accessible like this.
Can you speak about the sort of like how do you feel about like having your films available? Is that what you're saying? Sort of, is there like,
Well, thanks to streaming and the internet, I mean, any film basically is available, all the way back to the early talkies. You can, it's readily available. And I really like that. I like that. That's one of the great things about the internet, is the sharing of information.
the DC people are incredible tonight.
Camaraderie in American Graffiti is perfect. Were there many takes for scenes?
It was so low budget that you quickly realized that George was gonna print the mistakes if you didn't get it right the first or second time. And so we quickly learned to get it right the first time. And the dialogue wasn't complicated. There were no real long monologues or anything. It was just kind of, a little back and forth. And so if you made a mistake, I would say, please, can we just do it over? And you're like, nope, we're moving on.
Yes, you.
Yeah, I just want to also speak to the sound design of the movie, which is groundbreaking.
Incredible.
And being that the takes were taken quickly, I would say it was a flat production. When you saw all the sound design in the final product, were you just immersed in some new level of accomplishment that you never expected?
That's like all Walter Murch, isn't it? Walter Murch was amazing. He was asking about the sound design.
That's kind of a level that I'm not, up on, is sound design. I just know that the music, when on the script, it's talked about the music and the name of the stuff that was gonna be there, but until you hear it and see it, with the scenes, I was just really concerned with the dialogue and, getting through it, and it was very cold, but to me, it's pretty much a perfect film. It really is. And we're in the best 100 films of all times by the American Film Institute. I'm really proud of that.
We only have time for a couple more. Yes, you back there.
What was it like filming in sequential order?
Did you film in sequential order?
Not sure about that. Not sure about that.
You right there.
Do you have any memories of making more American Graffiti?
I sure do.
I love more American.
Whatever you do, don't hit those trash cans. That was a line of dialogue I must have said 10 times.
What was that
Great
stand for?
music, great music. We had a really good time shooting it, and I worked with Mackenzie Phillips again, and I was kind of I couldn't really figure out what my occupation was, but I know I was kind of dancing with a snake or something. Anyway, the rest of the movie, I had this snake, and I had a boyfriend named Lance, and it was New Year's Eve, and he cheated on me with another woman, and then there was a big bar fight, and, I was a lot of action.
It's not like, I think, we're there.
Thank you. You mentioned that women typically became secretaries or homemakers, and I wondered if you feel that that's why the final frame did not include future.
Ooh, that's interesting. She's saying
Final what?
well, she's saying you said earlier that women became homemakers and things like this, and she's wondering, like, there are not many women who get their little thing at the very end there. What happened to them? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Whatever happened to Cindy? What happened to Debbie?
Well, you'll find out in More American Graffiti. She and Cindy and Ron are heading for divorce. Oh, spoiler.
Candy would love to sign some more books in the lobby, so if you are
I thought we were
interested.
doing it here.
Oh, up here. I do not know where they're doing it. They're doing it up there. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, Candy.